A masterpiece lies beneath your feet, but its true story remains invisible to the untrained eye. Persian carpets are not simple decorations. They are complex historical documents woven with codes and secrets. By the end of this, you will be able to look at any Persian carpet and see the hidden language in its patterns. What if the symmetry of a garden design was actually a map of the stars? And what if a single, legendary color was the result of a lost alchemical recipe? What silent story do you think is waiting to be unraveled from the threads that same hidden language has been spoken for over 2,500 years? Its origins are buried deep within the golden age of the Achaemenid Empire, a time of immense palaces and powerful kings like Cyrus the Great. While the grand stone walls of Persepolis still stand, the empire's true soft power, its most intimate art, was being created not in stone, but in thread. The court historians wrote of a legendary carpet, woven entirely of gold and silver thread, depicting a royal garden. This was the spring of Khosrow, a treasure so immense it was rolled out for special ceremonies. Sadly, it vanished into history, lost to time and conquest. For centuries, this carpet lived only in stories, a phantom that hinted at a magnificent, but unproven, weaving tradition. Then, in the frozen highlands of Siberia, an archaeological miracle occurred. A team unearthed a Scythian burial mound, a tomb locked in permafrost. Inside, preserved for 2,500 years, was the Pazyryk carpet. Imagine the shock of finding the world's oldest surviving knotted pile carpet, not in Persia, but in a chieftain's grave thousands of miles away. Its existence is proof of a sophisticated trade network, a masterpiece so valuable it traveled the ancient Silk Road to its final, icy resting place. The carpet itself is a stunning document. Its central field is a grid of floral motifs, perhaps symbolizing an eternal garden, while the outer borders are a procession of majestic stags and horsemen. This single, frozen relic confirmed everything. It proved that the art of the Persian loom was not just a domestic craft. It was a global commodity of immense cultural power even in antiquity. But this discovery only deepens the central mystery. Why was this specific carpet, with its complex language of symbols, chosen to accompany a chieftain into the afterlife? What message was woven into its threads that was meant to last for eternity? The Pazyryk carpet reveals a story, but to truly understand it, you must learn to read the smallest marks, the individual letters of its text. Every Persian carpet holds its first great secret not in its grand patterns, but in the silent, repetitive motion of the weaver's hands. This is the hidden language of knots. Each tiny twist of thread around the warp is a deliberate choice, a single character in a vast woven manuscript. The number of knots per square inch, the specific type of knot used, these were not random acts of craft. They were a coded system of identification, a form of storytelling decipherable only by those who knew how to look. Think of a village nestled in the mountains of Kurdistan. The weavers there might use a particular asymmetrical knot, known as the Persian or Sene knot, tied in a way that creates a sharper, more detailed image. The density of their work could reach into the hundreds of thousands of knots per square meter, a testament to immense skill and patience. Now, travel to a Turkic tribal encampment on the plains. Here you would find the symmetrical Turkish or Giord's knot, which produces a bolder, more geometric pattern. The knot count here would be lower, but the resulting carpet is famously durable, built for a life of movement. Just by examining the knots, an expert can pinpoint the origin of a carpet, identifying not just a country, but the specific tribe or town where it was born. This language goes beyond mere geography. A high knot density was often a reflection of status, a piece made for a wealthy patron or a special occasion. The meticulous counting itself could be a form of meditation or prayer, with some traditions believing certain numbers held spiritual power. A weaver might even encode a personal story, a subtle message of hope or loss, within the relentless rhythm of the knots. It is a silent, tactile language, one you can feel with your fingertips. So the next time you see a Persian carpet, remember you are not just looking at a picture. You are looking at a complex document, and its first sentence is written in a code of loops and ties. But if knots are the words, then what is the grammar that holds them all together? That code of loops and ties is your first key to unlocking a carpet's origin story. Each region, each city, developed its own distinct dialect in this woven language. To the untrained eye, a carpet from Tabriz might look similar to one from Isfahan, but the hands that made them spoke different visual tongues. Let us start with the city of Tabriz, a legendary center of the carpet trade. A master weaver from Tabriz would often use the asymmetrical Persian knot with incredible precision, creating breathtakingly dense fields of over 1 million knots per square meter. This allowed for photorealistic detail, often depicting intricate garden scenes or complex floral motifs that ripple like a perfected version of nature. The colors are typically more varied and subtle, a sophisticated palette fit for royal courts. Now, travel south to the city of Isfahan. Here, the weavers also favor the asymmetrical knot, but the overall feeling of the carpet is different. Isfahan is famous for its signature Shah Abbas motif, a graceful, swirling pomegranate that repeats in a harmonious, almost musical rhythm. The designs are supremely balanced and elegant, often set against a rich, dark blue or an ivory background, making the detailed central medallion appear to float like a jewel. Then there is Kashan, another powerhouse of Persian weaving. Kashan carpets are renowned for their exceptionally fine weave and a profoundly deep, luminous crimson red that seems to glow from within. The patterns can be just as complex as those from Isfahan, but they often feel more compact, with a denser arrangement of floral and botanical elements. So how can you begin to see these differences for yourself? Look at the sharpness of the patterns. A Tabriz carpet will often have incredibly crisp, curved lines, almost like a painting. An Isfahan carpet will mesmerize you with its perfect, flowing symmetry. A Kashan carpet will captivate you with the depth of its iconic red and the intricate, all-over detail that covers every inch. These are the fingerprints of a city, the subtle signatures left by generations of artisans. Each knot is a word, and their collective arrangement forms a complete sentence that declares, "I am from here." But this is only the beginning of the story. If the knots and patterns tell us where a carpet is from, then what do the colors tell us about the people who made it? And the secret, almost magical recipes they used to bring their visions to life. These colors are more than just decoration. They are the soul of the carpet, born from a vanished alchemy. The second great secret lies in the ancient, guarded recipes for the dyes themselves. For centuries, the vibrant reds, deep blues, and golden yellows that define Persian carpets did not come from a laboratory, but from the earth. Master dyers were like chemists, working with recipes passed down through generations, often within a single family. Their workshop was a kitchen. Their ingredients were roots, leaves, and insects. To create the iconic, luminous red, they turned to the madder root. The roots were harvested, dried, and crushed, then soaked in water for days, sometimes weeks. The magic happened in the vat, where the temperature, the mineral content of the water, and even the type of pot used could alter the final shade. A slightly alkaline bath might pull out a fiery scarlet, while an acidic one could produce a deeper, blood-red crimson. This was not a simple process, it was a delicate dance with nature. For the profound, almost bottomless blues, there was only one source, indigo. Unlike madder root, indigo dye does not dissolve in water. The process was a form of fermentation, creating a vat of yellowish liquid that seemed to hold no color at all. Wool dipped into this vat would emerge a pale yellow, but as it was lifted into the air, a reaction with oxygen would occur. Right before your eyes, the fiber would slowly transform, deepening into the legendary shade of blue. It must have seemed like pure magic, and for yellows, the dyers used what was available. Pomegranate rind created a soft, golden hue, while saffron stamens, incredibly precious, could produce a brilliant, sunny yellow. The true mastery was in creating these colors to last. A poorly made synthetic dye can fade in a few years, but a carpet colored with these organic formulas, if kept from direct sun, can retain its brilliance for a century or more. The color becomes part of the fiber itself. So when you see that deep red in a Achaemenid carpet, you are not just seeing a color. You are seeing the patience of a dyer waiting for a madder root bath to mature. You are seeing a family secret, a piece of knowledge so valuable it was whispered from parent to child. This alchemy gave the carpets their life force. But what happens when you combine this secret language of color with the hidden grammar of patterns? What deeper story were the weavers trying to tell with this rich, symbolic palette? That legendary crimson red was more than a color, it was a ghost. For centuries, European dealers and collectors spoke of a specific, almost supernatural shade found in the oldest and most magnificent Persian carpets. It was a red that did not fade, a red that seemed to hold light within its fibers, glowing with a warmth that modern dyes could not replicate. They called it the lost crimson, and its exact recipe became one of the great obsessions of the textile world. The hunt for this single color was a historical mystery in itself. Everyone knew madder root was involved, but madder alone could not explain the unique depth and luminosity. The secret, it turned out, was not in one ingredient, but in a precise and often secret combination. The base was indeed the madder root, but the specific species mattered. Then came the first potential secret ingredient, the possible addition of crushed cochineal insects. These tiny insects, which live on certain cacti, produce a powerful, intense red. But using them alone created a different, more straightforward scarlet. The magic of the legendary crimson was in the balance, a subtle, almost alchemical blend of plant and insect dyes. Yet even this combination was not the full answer. The true key may have lain in the third component, the mordant. A mordant is a chemical substance used to bind the dye to the wool fiber. The most common mordant was alum, but for that legendary crimson, some experts believe the dyers used a special preparation. They might have added a small amount of iron or tin to the alum mordant bath, or they might have used a specific sequence of dyeing, perhaps dipping the wool first in the insect dye and then in the madder root bath, or vice versa. The exact process was a closely guarded secret, a family formula that was never written down. Over time, as these master dyers passed away and synthetic dyes offered an easier, cheaper path, the precise knowledge vanished. The quest to rediscover it became a kind of forensic science. Historians and chemists have analyzed tiny thread samples from antique carpets, using advanced technology to identify the chemical fingerprints of the dyes and mordants used centuries ago. They are piecing together the recipe fragment by fragment, like detectives solving a cold case. So when you see that profound, enduring crimson in an antique carpet, you are not just looking at a color. You are looking at the result of a forgotten formula, a perfect storm of natural ingredients and human ingenuity that, for now, remains just out of reach. This color was the lifeblood of the design, but what did it mean? Why was this specific red so powerful? And what secret messages were these master weavers embedding into the very fabric of their world? That lost crimson was a vessel for something far greater than mere beauty. Every choice in a Persian carpet, from the knot to the color, was in service of a single, profound principle, the principle of divine symmetry. The third secret is not just a design choice, it is a philosophical statement. The perfect, intricate symmetry you see in a classic Persian carpet is a deliberate mirror of the universe itself, a reflection of a cosmos governed by balance and divine order. This idea bridges ancient pre-Islamic Zoroastrian beliefs in cosmic duality, the eternal struggle between light and dark, with later Islamic philosophies that saw geometry as the language of God's creation. To the weaver, the loom became a tool for mapping the heavens. The central medallion that anchors so many designs is not just a pretty shape. It is often interpreted as the sun, a burst of divine light from which all creation flows. The repeating patterns that radiate outward are the orbiting planets, the cycles of life, the endless repetition of days and seasons. Every element has its perfect opposite, creating a visual harmony that seeks to represent a world in perfect balance. This is why there are no true accidents in a masterwork. A deliberate break in the pattern, a single knot tied in a contrasting color, might be inserted by the weaver as a humble acknowledgement that only God can create perfection. This intentional flaw, often called the Persian flaw, is a deeply spiritual gesture, a moment of human humility woven into a depiction of divine order. So when you gaze at the breathtaking symmetry of an Isfahan carpet, with its swirling vines and perfectly mirrored pomettes, you are not just looking at a pattern. You are looking at a microcosm, a miniature universe woven in wool and dye. It is a prayer made visible, an attempt to bring the perfect order of the heavens down to earth, onto the very floor you walk on. But if these carpets were maps of the cosmos and prayers in thread, who were the people weaving these silent, sacred messages, and what hidden corners of their own lives did they stitch into the fabric? This divine symmetry was governed by a hidden set of mathematical laws. The weavers of old were not just artists, they were geometers and mathematicians, working with principles so complex they were rarely written down. Instead, this knowledge was memorized, passed from master to apprentice through years of patient practice. The most profound of these secrets was the golden ratio, a specific mathematical proportion found throughout nature, from the spiral of a seashell to the arrangement of petals on a flower. A master weaver would use this ratio intuitively to determine the perfect placement of a central medallion, the ideal width of a border, and the harmonious spacing of every single motif. The result is a design that feels inherently balanced and beautiful to the human eye, even if the viewer cannot explain why. This is the reason a classic Persian carpet feels so perfectly composed. It is not a happy accident, it is the result of an invisible grid of mathematical perfection. Alongside the golden ratio, weavers mastered the art of tessellation, the practice of fitting geometric shapes together without any gaps or overlaps. Think of the intricate star patterns or interlocking hexagons that cover some tribal carpets. Each shape, no matter how complex, had to fit perfectly with its neighbor across the entire vast surface of the carpet. The weaver had to hold this entire geometric puzzle in her mind, calculating the progression of each row to ensure the pattern locked together flawlessly from one edge to the other. There were no blueprints to follow, only the mental map of the design and the rhythmic click of the loom. This was a form of applied mathematics as sophisticated as any architectural plan. So when you admire the flawless repetition of a pattern, you are witnessing a feat of memory and calculation. The weaver knew that a single miscount, one knot out of place, would ripple through the entire design, breaking the sacred symmetry. This mathematical precision was the invisible framework that held the cosmic map together. But it raises a deeper question. Who were these anonymous mathematicians? These women who held the universe in their minds and translated it, not by perfect knot, into a language of wool and wonder. Those anonymous mathematicians of the loom were often weaving more than just patterns. They were weaving prayers. The fourth secret transforms these carpets from cosmic maps into sacred, protective objects. For countless weavers, the act of creation was a spiritual practice, and the rug itself became a portable place of worship, a shield against misfortune, and a guide for the soul. This is most beautifully seen in the prayer rug, a specific type of carpet designed for daily communion. Its entire layout is a spiritual roadmap. The central arch, known as the mihrab, points the worshipper toward Mecca, creating a direct, physical connection to the divine during prayer. But the symbolism goes far deeper than just direction. Every element on a prayer rug carries a protective or hopeful meaning. Look closely at the borders. They often depict rows of lamp motifs, symbolizing the light of God illuminating the path. You might see comb and water jug symbols, representing the purity and cleansing required before prayer. The field of the rug itself might be filled with flowers, a depiction of the paradise gardens that await the faithful. This was a personal, spiritual landscape laid out at one's feet 5 times a day. But one symbol rises above all others in its mystery and power, the bote, a shape you know today as the paisley. Its true origin is ancient and debated, but its meaning is profound. Many scholars believe it represents a sacred flame, the eternal fire of Zoroastrianism that symbolized life and the divine. Others see it as a stylized cypress tree, an ancient Persian symbol of eternity and resilience. Some even interpret it as a teardrop or a sprouting seed. Regardless of its precise origin, the bode became a powerful talisman, woven into carpets to bring good fortune, fertility, and protection from the evil eye. It was not merely a decorative shape, it was a vessel of blessing, a silent prayer for life and continuity repeated across the fabric. So a mother weaving a carpet for her family's home would intentionally include these bode motifs, not for their beauty alone, but to surround her loved ones with an invisible shield of protection and hope. She might weave a row of them along the border, creating a chain of safeguards. She might scatter them throughout the field like seeds, praying for abundance. The carpet became a silent guardian, its symbols a constant, whispered prayer for those who lived upon it. This deep spiritual layer answers the question of why such immense care was taken. It was not just about creating art, it was about imbuing an object with a soul, weaving a permanent blessing into the very fibers of daily life. But if a single carpet could hold such powerful intentions, what happens when an entire community pours its identity into a collective masterpiece? That silent prayer woven into a family rug could expand to encompass an entire empire. The fifth secret suggests that the grandest carpets were far more than sacred art. They were functional documents, woven maps hiding immense knowledge in plain sight. This is the cartographer's code. Some of the largest and most intricate palace carpets ever created are believed to be literal charts of the world, as the royal court understood it. Their vast fields, often depicting elaborate gardens, are now thought by some scholars to be precise diagrams of the very gardens surrounding the palace. Each flowing water channel in the pattern might correspond to a real irrigation canal. Every tree motif could represent the specific placement of a cypress or a fruit tree in the royal grounds. The carpet was a portable, indestructible blueprint, a way to plan, to manage, and to symbolically possess the entire domain from the comfort of the throne room. But the mapping went beyond the earthly. Look at a carpet with a central medallion surrounded by a field of intricate, repeating patterns. You see a beautiful design, but a cartographer of the time might have seen a celestial chart. The central medallion could represent the pole star, the unmoving center of the heavens, while the orbiting patterns trace the movements of constellations or the paths of planets. These carpets were not just metaphors for the cosmos. They were functional tools for tracking time and seasons, their patterns a mnemonic device for remembering celestial cycles. The most daring theory involves trade. The Silk Road was a tangled web of routes, a closely guarded secret of immense economic power. What if a powerful trading family commissioned a carpet whose borders contained a coded map of these routes? A specific sequence of motifs, a camel here, a particular flower there, might indicate the locations of vital oases, mountain passes, or trading posts. To anyone else, it was mere decoration, but to the initiated, it was a priceless and portable guide to wealth. This transforms the carpet from a beautiful object into an active participant in history. It was a repository of knowledge at a time when paper was fragile and maps were rare. The weaver was not just an artist, but a scribe, recording the geography of both earth and sky into a language of wool and dye. So the next time you stand before a massive, intricate Persian carpet, ask yourself a new question. Are you looking at a decoration, or are you standing on a map of a forgotten world, a chart of the stars, a key to a secret trade route? If these carpets hold such immense, hidden knowledge, then who were the master weavers capable of this incredible feat? And how did their genius shape the world beyond the loom? History offers a tangible clue to these cartographic secrets in the form of a single, breathtaking artifact, the Ardabil carpet. Woven in the city of Tabriz during the Safavid dynasty's golden age, this masterpiece is more than a beautiful object. It is a document frozen in time. Its vast, dark blue field is dominated by a central golden medallion, a sunburst from which intricate floral patterns radiate outward like celestial bodies in orbit. The entire design is a mirror of the night sky, a deliberate mapping of cosmic order onto a woven surface. But the Ardabil carpet holds an even more personal secret, one that confirms its role as a functional record. Woven directly into its border is a poetic inscription, a couplet that acts as its own decryption key. The verse includes the signature of the master weaver, Maqsud of Kashan, and crucially, the date of its completion, the year 946 in the Islamic calendar. This was not just a date, it was a timestamp, a way to anchor the carpet's celestial patterns to a specific moment in history. Scholars have long pondered if the arrangement of its motifs corresponds to the actual night sky over Persia in that very year, making the carpet a kind of astronomical chart. The central medallion could be Polaris, the unmoving pivot of the heavens, while the swirling palmettes and lotus blossoms trace the paths of planets or mark significant constellations known to Persian astronomers. This transforms the carpet from a mere representation of the cosmos into a functional mnemonic device, a way to recall and teach the movements of the stars. Yet the mapping might also be terrestrial. The harmonious, quartered garden design, with its flowing channels and blossoming trees, is a perfect reflection of the Persian concept of a paradise garden, a walled, ordered space that represented heaven on earth. It is highly probable that the Ardabil carpet was a symbolic blueprint of a real royal garden, perhaps one surrounding a palace or a shrine. Each floral cluster could mark the location of a specific flower bed, each water channel in the pattern mirroring an actual irrigation stream. To walk upon this carpet was to symbolically traverse a sacred, manicured landscape, a map of both earthly paradise and the divine cosmos above. So this single, magnificent carpet served a dual purpose. It was a spiritual guide for prayer and a sophisticated repository of knowledge, blending astronomy, geography, and art into one unified language. If a carpet could hold the layout of a garden and the map of the stars, what other profound secrets are still locked within the patterns of the world's most famous rugs? That very inscription on the Ardabil carpet is not just a date. It is a rare and open declaration of identity. For most of history, the hands that tied millions of knots remained anonymous, their genius lost to time. Yet some master weavers found a way to whisper their name into the fabric. This is the sixth secret, the weaver's signature, a subtle act of pride and identity hidden in plain sight. A weaver could not simply sign their work in the corner like a painter. To do so would disrupt the sacred symmetry, violating the spiritual and aesthetic rules of the craft. Their signature had to become part of the pattern itself, a coded message woven into the continuous flow of the design. The most common place to hide this mark was within the complex geometry of the border. A weaver might subtly alter a single, recurring floral motif, changing its shape just enough to form the first letter of their name in the Arabic or Persian script. To anyone else, it looked like a minor variation, a natural part of the intricate repetition. But to the initiated, it was a clear, deliberate initial. Another method was to encode a date, using the abjad system, an ancient practice where letters have numerical values. A weaver could spell out a word or a phrase that, when its letters were converted to numbers, revealed the year of completion. The phrase would look like a pious invocation or a fragment of poetry, its true meaning as a timestamp completely concealed from the uninitiated. Sometimes, the signature was even more personal. A weaver grieving a lost child might weave a small, stylized bird flying away from the main garden scene. A weaver hoping for a son might incorporate a specific, hidden fish symbol, a traditional emblem of protection and good fortune. These were not just names, they were fragments of a life story, emotional fingerprints pressed into the wool. This practice was a tremendous risk. If a patron discovered a hidden signature, they might see it as an act of vanity and reject the entire carpet. The weaver had to balance their desire for recognition with the need for their work to be perfect and pure in the eyes of the buyer. So they hid their identity with the same precision they used to map the stars, leaving behind a secret testament for future generations to discover. These hidden marks transform the carpet from an anonymous masterpiece into a personal letter from the past. What other intimate secrets are waiting in the borders of the world's most famous rugs? And what would these long silent artists tell us if we could finally read their names? Those hidden signatures were personal stories, but the carpets themselves could tell epic tales of entire nations. The seventh secret reveals that these textiles were a covert medium for history, chronicling wars, peace, and diplomacy in a language of symbols safe from the ravages of time. When a great battle was won or a treaty signed, the event was often immortalized not just in official court chronicles, but in the patterns of the royal carpets. A victorious Shah might commission a carpet where the entire field was a stylized depiction of the battlefield. Rows of floral motifs, like tulips or carnations, could represent the orderly ranks of his own soldiers. The opposing forces might be shown as a border of chaotic, thorny vines, being systematically contained and overcome by the harmonious central design. The color palette would tell its own story. A prevalence of deep reds and crimsons could signify the bloodshed and the ultimate victory, while the introduction of brilliant gold thread, woven in silk, would celebrate the spoils of war and the glory of the empire. After a long period of conflict, a new era of peace would be announced through a dramatic shift in design. The chaotic battle motifs would vanish, replaced by the serene, symmetrical beauty of the garden carpet. These lush, flowing patterns of blooming flowers, flowing streams, and graceful cypress trees were not just decorative. They were a public declaration that order had been restored, that the land was once again fertile and prosperous. It was a woven peace treaty, a promise of stability and harmony that everyone in the court could see and walk upon. Even diplomatic marriages were recorded in this textile code. A princess sent to forge an alliance with a neighboring kingdom might bring with her a dowry of carpets. These pieces would often feature a unique fusion of motifs, blending the symbols of her homeland with those of her new husband's court. You might see the distinctive lotus flower of one region intertwined with the geometric star of another, a silent, lasting testament to a political union meant to ensure peace. For the people of the time, these visual narratives were immediately understood. To walk into a throne room and see a new carpet filled with lion motifs subduing dragons was to receive a clear message about the Shah's power and his recent military successes. The carpets were a living newspaper, their stories unfolding underfoot, telling tales of triumph, loss, and hope in a silent, enduring language that outlasted the kings and empires that commissioned them. The ultimate expression of this woven history may lie in a legendary, lost textile, the so-called Battle of Chaldiran Carpet. In the early 16th century, the Ottoman and Safavid empires clashed in a catastrophic confrontation that redefined the borders of the Middle East. While no carpet definitively linked to the battle survives, the tradition is so strong that historians piece together its likely story from later works. Imagine a vast carpet commissioned by the Safavid court after their shattering defeat, a textile meant not to celebrate a victory, but to process a profound trauma. The central field would not be a harmonious garden, but a chaotic, dynamic depiction of the conflict itself. The Ottoman forces, with their formidable gunpowder weapons and disciplined janissaries, might be represented by a relentless border of stark, geometric patterns and motifs resembling cannons or muskets, woven in somber shades of gray and black. Their advance would be shown as an overwhelming mechanical force pressing inward. In the center, the Safavid cavalry, the heart of their army, could be symbolized by a swirling, chaotic mass of horsemen motifs, their famous curved swords depicted as flashing arcs of silver thread. But these heroic symbols would be shown as fractured, surrounded and broken by the relentless geometric tide. The color palette would tell a story of fire, smoke, and blood, with searing oranges and deep reds dominating the scene. A keen eye might even detect a hidden narrative in the flow of the patterns. The Ottoman lines would be perfectly straight and ordered, reflecting their superior tactics and use of fortifications, while the Safavid patterns would be more fluid and scattered, mirroring the chaotic, heroic but ultimately futile cavalry charges that define their defeat. This was not just a record of a battle, it was a complex analysis of it. The carpet would serve as a permanent, tactile lesson for future generations of rulers, a stark reminder of the changing nature of warfare and the consequences of tactical failure. Every knot was a silent witness, every symbol a fallen soldier. To walk upon such a carpet would be to tread on a nation's memory, a daily, sobering reminder of a turning point in history, preserved not on fragile parchment, but in the enduring language of wool and dye. That profound, enduring crimson was a secret held not by the weaver, but by a hidden master. Behind every great carpet lay a secret society, the guilds of dyers, a separate and intensely secretive class of artisans. These men were the alchemists of color, and their workshops were fortresses of knowledge. To achieve that legendary, consistent red across hundreds of carpets for a single royal commission, they relied on more than just recipes. They operated under a strict code of rituals and silence. The knowledge of how to ferment a madder root vat for exactly 40 days, or the precise moment to add a handful of crushed cochineal insects, was protected as fiercely as a state secret. This was not mere tradecraft, it was a sacred trust. An apprentice dyer would spend years performing menial tasks before being gradually initiated into the mysteries. He might first be taught to identify the correct species of madder root by the texture of its bark. Only years later would he learn the secret of the mordant bath, the special preparation of alum with a touch of tin that transformed a simple red into that luminous, legendary crimson. The most critical formulas were never written down. They were memorized through chants, poems, or rhythmic phrases, passed from master to apprentice in the steam-filled dyeing house. This oral tradition was a deliberate defense, ensuring that the empire's most valuable color technology could not be stolen by rivals or lost to conquest. Their rituals extended to the very materials they used. The water for the dye vats might only be drawn from a specific well, known for its perfect mineral balance. The wooden paddles used for stirring could be made from a particular type of tree, believed to impart a subtle warmth to the color. These were not superstitions, they were controlled variables, a way to achieve flawless consistency long before modern chemistry. A master dyer could look at a single thread and know if the vat had been stirred one too few times, or if the water had been drawn after a rainstorm. This obsessive control meant that a carpet woven in Tabriz in spring would perfectly match one woven in Isfahan in autumn, creating a unified visual language for an entire empire. So while the weaver translated the cosmos into knots, the dyer translated the earth into a perfect, enduring spectrum. Theirs was a hidden world of fire, steam, and silence, where the most vibrant beauty was born from the most fiercely guarded secrets. That secret society of dyers relied on a network of trade routes stretching halfway across the world. The ninth great secret of the Persian carpet is that it was never a purely Persian invention. It is a living record of the greatest cultural exchange in human history, the Silk Road. For centuries, these routes were not just conduits for silk and spices, but a clandestine network for the exchange of artistic ideas, a form of cultural espionage conducted in wool and silk. Persian weavers were master assimilators, absorbing influences from every corner of the known world and weaving them into a new, uniquely Persian language. From the distant courts of China came one of the most profound influences, the cloud band motif. These soft, scrolling, ribbon-like forms were a signature of Chinese art, representing the celestial heavens. Persian weavers saw their beauty and their symbolic power, but they did not simply copy them. They adapted them, sharpening their curves and integrating them into their own symmetrical designs. Soon, these cloud bands were drifting across the fields of Persian carpets, no longer purely Chinese, but now an essential part of the Persian visual vocabulary, symbolizing a connection to the divine. From the west, from the powerful Byzantine Empire, came another key import, the fascination with intricate floral and vine patterns. Byzantine silks and mosaics were filled with lush, scrolling acanthus leaves and complex interlace. Persian artisans studied these patterns, but again, they transformed them. They imposed their own sense of mathematical order and rhythm, creating the perfectly balanced, endlessly repeating floral designs that would become a hallmark of carpets from cities like Isfahan. The influence even extended to materials. The vibrant lacquer reds prized in Indian art likely fueled the Persian obsession with their own legendary crimson, pushing dyers to perfect their recipes to compete in a global marketplace. But this was not a one-way street. The cultural espionage went both ways. A Persian carpet traveling east to China might introduce the concept of the central medallion, a design element that later appeared in Chinese textile art. A carpet heading west into Europe could arrive in a royal court, its intricate patterns and rich colors instantly setting a new standard for luxury. European artists, particularly during the Renaissance, would study these imported carpets in paintings, meticulously rendering their exotic patterns in the backgrounds of portraits of saints and nobility. The carpet underfoot in a European painting was a silent testament to Persian artistic dominance, a symbol of wealth and sophistication that had traveled thousands of miles. So the next time you see a Persian carpet, you are not just looking at a national art form, you are looking at a global conversation. You see Chinese clouds, Byzantine vines, and Indian colors, all filtered through a Persian sensibility and woven into a cohesive whole. It is a masterpiece of cultural diplomacy, a secret history of the ancient world recorded in knots and color. That central medallion is the heart of the carpet, and it holds a secret that can transform your entire understanding of the design. This focal point is far more than a decorative anchor. It is a multi-layered symbol, a single motif that can represent a flower, a dome, and a portal all at once. At its most fundamental level, the medallion is a cosmic flower, a stylized lotus or sunflower seen from above. In ancient Persian symbolism, the lotus represents purity and creation, emerging pristine from murky waters. By placing this universal symbol of life at the very center, the weaver establishes the carpet as a miniature world, a fertile ground from which all other patterns grow and flourish. The radiating patterns around it are not just petals or rays, they are the unfolding of creation itself. Yet this same shape effortlessly transforms into an architectural marvel. Look up at the interior of a grand mosque, and you will see the soaring dome that covers the sacred space below. The central medallion in your carpet is a direct reflection of that architectural dome. It creates a canopy overhead, a symbolic dome of heaven right under your feet. When you stand upon a carpet with a central medallion, you are standing directly beneath a woven representation of the celestial vault, the center of the universe. This is why the designs are so often symmetrical and balanced. They are depicting a perfected, heavenly order, but the most profound interpretation is that of a spiritual portal. The medallion acts as a threshold, a liminal space between the earthly realm and the divine. In a prayer rug, the medallion within the arch is the ultimate destination, the point upon which a worshipper focuses their mind to transcend the physical world. It is an opening, a doorway to another state of consciousness. This symbolism could also be tailored to power. A royal court might commission a carpet where the central medallion is not a generic flower, but a specific, intricate insignia of the ruling dynasty. This transformed the entire carpet into a statement of authority. To walk upon it was to literally tread upon the symbol of the king's power, a daily reminder of his central role in the universe and his dominion over the land the carpet represented. So how do you decode the medallion you are looking at? Ask yourself a few simple questions. Does it look more like a bursting flower, suggesting creation and life? Does it resemble a geometric, architectural dome, implying cosmic order in heaven? Or does it feel like a unique, complex emblem, hinting at a specific royal patron? The answer reveals the primary intention of the weaver. That central shape is the key that unlocks the carpet's deepest purpose, telling you whether you are standing on a map of the cosmos, a fragment of a royal garden, or a gateway to the divine. One of the most potent examples of this symbolic power is the coronation carpet. Woven in the 16th century, this masterpiece was used centuries later for the coronation of Napoleon III of France, a monarch who understood the language of symbols all too well. Its central medallion is not a simple flower. It is a complex, radiating sunburst of intricate arabesques and pomettes. This is the Sun King's medallion, a direct invocation of solar deities that long predate the loom itself. In ancient Persia, Mithras was worshipped as a god of covenants and the sun, a divine judge whose light vanquished darkness. The Zoroastrian faith centered on Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, who was often symbolized by a winged sun disk. When a Safavid weaver crafted this sunburst medallion, he was tapping into this deep cultural memory, linking the ruling Shah to these ancient sources of light, power, and divine order. The message was clear. The king on the throne was the modern embodiment of that eternal, life-giving force, his justice and influence radiating out to the farthest corners of his empire, just as the sun's rays reached every part of the woven garden. But the symbolism is even more specific. Look closely at the medallion's surrounding field. You will often see a repeated motif of animals in combat, lions subduing lesser beasts or locked in struggle with dragons. The lion was the ultimate symbol of royal authority and courage. By placing the solar medallion above this scene of terrestrial power, the weaver created a layered narrative. The sun gives life to the kingdom, and under its divine light, the king's power, represented by the lion, maintains order and conquers chaos. The central motif is not just a sun, it is a celestial crown, legitimizing the very concept of kingship. This transforms the carpet from a floor covering into a throne room's argument, a visual thesis on the divine right of kings woven in wool and silk. To walk across it was to accept that political reality. So the next time you see a central medallion, ask yourself, is it merely a beautiful shape? Or is it a crown, a sun, and a declaration of power, all woven into one silent, commanding statement? That solar medallion was more than a crown, it was a shield. Beneath the surface of geometric perfection and botanical beauty lies a deeper, more esoteric secret. Some Persian carpets were not just maps or prayers, they were functional talismans, woven with the explicit intention of manipulating the unseen world. These were magical artifacts, designed to protect a home, heal a body, or attract fortune through a hidden language of symbols and numbers. The most direct form of this protective magic was the incorporation of sacred text. Tiny, meticulously woven verses from the Quran could be integrated into the borders of a carpet, transforming the entire piece into a blessed object. The very fibers were imbued with holy words, creating a spiritual barrier against malevolent forces. To walk upon such a carpet was not disrespectful. It was a way to constantly be in contact with divine protection, to have blessings literally underfoot. Beyond written scripture, specific symbols acted as powerful wards. The most universal of these was the eye motif, woven to deflect the evil eye, a curse of envy or ill will. A weaver concerned for a child's health might hide a small, stylized eye within the complex pattern of a cradle cover, a silent guardian against unseen harm. Another common talisman was the hand, known as the Hand of Fatima, a symbol of power, strength, and blessing. Woven into the corner of a main carpet, it served as a perpetual gesture of protection over the entire household. But the magic could be even more subtle, encoded in the very mathematics of the design. A weaver might use a specific, spiritually significant number of knots in a repeating sequence. The number 5, for instance, could represent the 5 holy figures of Shia Islam, while the number 7 might echo the 7 days of creation. This numerical rhythm was a form of incantation, a repeated prayer counted out in knots, believed to amplify the carpet's protective or beneficial power. A carpet intended to bring wealth might be woven with a border pattern that subtly incorporated open purse or coin symbols, one meant to ensure a healthy lineage could be filled with hidden fish motifs, ancient emblems of fertility and abundance. For the owner, these were not mere decorations. They were a form of spiritual security, a daily interaction with an object that was actively working for their benefit. The carpet was a member of the family, a silent, watchful guardian woven from wool and will. That silent guardian woven into your home holds one final, universal symbol, a key that unlocks identity, faith, and the very idea of paradise. It is the gull, a stylized floral or octagonal motif that repeats like a heartbeat across the field of tribal carpets. To the untrained eye, it is a simple, decorative shape, but it is actually a heraldic emblem, a coat of arms for nomadic peoples who carried their entire history on the backs of their animals. Each tribe had its own distinct gull, a design so specific that you could identify the weaver's community from a single, repeated motif. The Turkmen people, for instance, are famous for their bold, geometric gulls, often shaped like an octagon divided into quarters, resembling a flower scene from above. This was their tribal signature, woven into every major carpet and bag, a declaration of belonging that was both beautiful and functional. In a vast, open landscape where written deeds were non-existent, the gull woven into your tent band or main carpet was your family's immutable proof of identity, a symbol of your place in the world that could not be lost or stolen. Yet the gull is more than a name, it is a portable piece of paradise. The word itself is thought to be related to the Persian word for flower, and in the context of a garden carpet, these repeating floral medallions are the individual flower beds of a heavenly garden. Each gull is a singular, perfect blossom in an eternal spring, a promise of the paradise that awaits the faithful. But the symbolism deepens further when you decipher the specific flower being represented. A gull with long, slender, curving petals might be a stylized tulip. In Persian poetry, the tulip is a symbol of perfect love, but also of martyrdom, its red blossom said to spring from the blood of a fallen hero. A carpet filled with tulip gulls, then, is not just a pretty pattern. It is a field of remembrance, a woven memorial to sacrifice and eternal love. Conversely, a gull with more rounded, layered petals could represent the lotus, an ancient symbol of purity and creation rising unsullied from muddy waters. This connects the design to pre-Islamic beliefs and a universal hope for spiritual rebirth. So the next time your gaze rests on a repeating gull pattern, ask yourself what you are truly seeing. Are you looking at a tribal flag, a family name written in wool? Are you seeing a single flower in a divine, orderly garden? Or are you witnessing a silent poem about love, loss, or spiritual purity? This simple shape is a universe of meaning, a single word in the carpet's story that can tell you everything about who made it, what they believed, and what they hoped would last forever. That family signature woven into a tribal gull was a declaration of identity. But for the most magnificent court carpets, identity was a state secret. The creation of these royal masterpieces did not happen in a simple village workshop, but within heavily guarded compounds known as carcanes. These were not just studios, they were intellectual fortresses, the research and development centers of their day, operating under a veil of silence and strict security. Imagine a sprawling complex attached to the royal palace, buzzing with hundreds of specialized artisans, each a master of a single, precise task. In one hall, the dyers worked over their steaming vats, the air thick with the scent of madder root and fermenting indigo. In another, the most skilled spinners transformed raw silk into thread as fine as a spider's web. And in the main weaving hall, rows upon rows of immense looms stood, each one bearing a carpet commissioned by the Shah himself. Access was severely restricted. The designs created here were considered state property, as valuable and sensitive as any military blueprint. A master pattern maker would draft the intricate blueprints for a new garden carpet, a design meant to symbolize the Shah's divine right to rule. Once the design was approved, it was locked away, and the weavers worked from small, coded sections handed out to them, ensuring no single person, except for the headmaster, knew the full pattern being woven. This was a deliberate strategy to prevent espionage. Rival courts would send agents, disguised as merchants or travelers, to try and bribe weavers for their knowledge or to steal a prized design. The punishment for leaking a state secret from a carcane was severe, often death. This culture of secrecy extended to the techniques themselves. The exact method for creating that luminous crimson, the specific knotting technique that allowed for unprecedented detail, even the way gold and silver thread was woven into the pile, these were all proprietary technologies of the royal workshop. They were what gave one empire a cultural and economic advantage over another. The weavers inside lived a life of immense privilege and intense pressure, creating beauty under the watchful eyes of the royal guards, knowing that their work was not just art, but a tool of power, and that its secrets were worth more than their own lives. That legendary durability was not an accident of time. It was a deliberate engineering feat. The secret to a Persian carpet surviving for centuries lies in a chain of deliberate choices, beginning with the very animal that provided its raw material. Specific breeds of mountain sheep, like the Kurdish or Achaemenid breeds, were prized for their wool. These sheep endured harsh, arid climates and rugged terrain, which caused their fleece to develop a unique, resilient structure. Each fiber is coated in a natural, protective layer of lanolin, a waxy substance that repels moisture and dirt, acting as a built-in shield. This wool is not soft and fluffy like that of lowland sheep. It is strong, springy, and lustrous, possessing a natural elasticity that allows the knots to withstand decades of compression and foot traffic without breaking. The shearing was also timed precisely, often in the spring, to capture the wool at its longest and strongest. From the very first step, the material itself was selected for immortality. But the perfect wool is nothing without perfect preparation. The secret continues in the ancient art of hand spinning. Using a simple drop spindle, spinners would twist the raw fibers into thread with a precise, consistent tension. This was not a hurried process. The thread was always spun with a Z-twist, meaning the fibers were twisted clockwise, which aligns with the natural crimp of the wool and increases its tensile strength. This robust hand-spun thread was then plied, meaning 2 or more strands were twisted together in the opposite direction, creating a balanced, incredibly durable yarn that would neither unravel nor fray under the immense tension of the loom. This plied yarn was the backbone of the carpet, a flexible yet unbreakable cord ready to be transformed. The final act of engineering happened on the loom itself. The warp threads, running vertically, were stretched with an almost inhuman tension. A master weaver knew that the tighter the warp, the tighter and more secure each knot would be. As each row of knots was tied, the weaver would then beat them down into the warp with a heavy, comb-like tool. This was not a gentle tap. It was a powerful, percussive blow that packed the knots together with immense force, locking them into a dense, solid matrix. The resulting fabric was so tightly integrated that it could resist pulling, tearing, and the gradual wear that would destroy a looser textile. This combination of resilient wool, perfectly spun yarn, and brutally compacted weaving created a textile that was less like a fabric and more like a geological layer, a sedimentary rock built knot by knot, designed by its makers not just for beauty, but for eternity. That dense, resilient fabric was more than a durable floor covering. It was a form of liquid wealth. These masterpieces were not just admired in palaces, they were actively traded as a high-value currency, a secret economic engine woven into the very fabric of ancient empires. A single, magnificent carpet could be worth more than a chest of gold coins, and its value was universally recognized across cultures and kingdoms. This made them the perfect instrument for high-stakes diplomacy. When one empire sought to secure an alliance or broker a peace treaty, they did not send only gold. They sent carpets. A gift of a dozen masterworks from the royal Achaemenid was a statement of immense respect and power, a display of cultural sophistication that mere precious metal could not match. The receiving monarch understood the message. The value was not just in the object, but in the thousands of hours of skilled labor and the secret knowledge it represented. This was a currency backed by human genius. The same principle applied to dowries. A bride from a wealthy or noble family would bring carpets as part of her dowry, a portable fortune that provided financial security in her new life. These were not merely decorative gifts for her new home. They were a bank account woven in wool and silk, assets that could be sold or traded if necessary. Their value is stable, enduring, and easily verifiable, making them a safer store of wealth than land or coin, which could be seized or devalued by war or political turmoil. Even the settling of colossal debts between empires was often conducted with carpets. Historical records speak of war indemnities and tribute payments that included hundreds of carpets among the items of value transferred from a defeated kingdom to a victor. To possess a collection of another empire's finest carpets was to hold a piece of their cultural treasury, a tangible symbol of their submission and your economic dominance. So the next time you see an antique Persian carpet in a museum, look beyond its beauty. You are looking at a former unit of economic power, a silent witness to treaties signed, alliances forged, and fortunes transferred. It was art that functioned as a banknote, a masterpiece that could literally pay for a king's ransom or secure a princess's future. That silent economic power began to fade with the hum of machinery. The Industrial Revolution did not just change how carpets were made, it systematically erased entire chapters of the woven language. The first and most devastating loss was the secret alchemy of the dye masters. Synthetic dyes, invented in the late 19th century, offered a tantalizing shortcut. They were cheap, consistent, and produced a dizzying array of bright, garish colors that initially captivated the market. But this convenience came at a terrible cost. These early chemical dyes were unstable. A carpet that glowed with a brilliant emerald green or a shocking magenta would, within a few years, fade to a dull, muddy gray. The complex, luminous colors born from madder root and indigo, colors that deepened and matured with age, were replaced by hues that simply died. The knowledge of how to ferment an indigo vat for exactly 42 days, or the precise blend of madder and cochineal to create that legendary crimson, vanished within a single generation. The master dyers took their chance and their recipes to the grave, their workshops falling silent forever. The second great loss was the erosion of the cartographer's code. As demand for Persian carpets exploded in the West, commercial workshops prioritized speed and volume over the intricate, symbolic storytelling of the past. A pattern that once held a map of a royal garden or a celestial chart was now simplified, stripped of its specific meaning, and replicated endlessly for an audience that only saw decoration. The subtle regional dialects of knots and patterns began to blur into a homogenized international style. The personal signatures, the protective talismans, the woven narratives of battle and peace, these were the first elements to be discarded in the name of efficiency. Why spend weeks encoding a date using the abjad system when a buyer simply wanted a red carpet with a pretty medallion? The third and perhaps most profound loss was the collapse of the traditional apprenticeship. For centuries, a young girl would sit beside her grandmother for years, learning not just the muscle memory of the knots, but the stories behind every symbol, the rhythm of the counting, and the spiritual intention behind the work. This was an oral university, a slow transfer of wisdom from one mind to another. The modern economy had no time for this. The deep, intuitive understanding of divine symmetry and mathematical proportion frayed as weavers were trained to follow pre-printed patterns on grids, their role reduced from that of a composer to a mere musician reading sheet music. The language became hollow, its grammar forgotten. Yet, all is not lost. A quiet but determined movement of historians, chemists, and dedicated artisans is fighting to reverse this erosion. In university laboratories, scientists are using high-performance liquid chromatography to analyze single threads from antique carpet fragments, identifying the chemical fingerprints of the long-lost organic dyes. They are, in effect, reverse engineering the ghost of a color. Meanwhile, master weavers in remote villages and dedicated cooperatives are consciously reviving the old ways. They are seeking out the descendants of those mountain sheep breeds, hand spinning the wool with the ancient Z twist, and patiently relearning the forgotten knotting sequences from surviving fragments. They are not just making carpets, they are performing archaeology on a living tradition, trying to piece the language back together one knot at a time. The question is no longer what we have lost, but what we can still recover from the silence. So the journey through the loom reaches its final knot. We have unraveled a world where every thread holds a secret, where knots form a coded language of origin and status, and colors are born from the lost alchemy of roots and insects. We have seen these textiles as celestial maps charting the stars, as sacred talismans woven with protective prayers, and as silent chronicles of empires, recording battles and peace treaties in a durable language of symbols. They functioned as both spiritual portals and hard currency, a form of liquid wealth that could secure an alliance or a princess's future. A Persian carpet is far more than a decorative object. It is a complex historical document, a multi-layered manuscript written in wool and dyed with time. The next time you encounter a piece of ancient art, whether it is a tapestry, a pottery shard, or a carving, look closer. Ask what silent stories are waiting in its patterns, what hidden hands left their mark, and what forgotten world it once represented. Of all the secrets we have uncovered, from the weaver's hidden signature to the cartographer's coded map, which one captured your imagination the most? Share the secret that fascinated you in the comments below, and keep looking for the hidden languages woven into the world around you.